So, hi, this is Lori,
This is Peter.
This is Hamilton.
and we want to
And
welcome our guest Ryan, my friend Ryan, to us as we do a review of The Mandalorian, or recap, or a react. I don't know what you want to call it. So, we've already been through two seasons of Mandalorian. When the first show first started, Hamilton and I talked about possibly doing a review, or we never got around to it. I don't think I wanted to do episodic reviews, but after the end of season two, it's like we got to do something, guys. So, and I especially wanted to invite Ryan in because he's the biggest Star Wars fan I know, and he has like an encyclopedic knowledge of Star Wars. So it's Ryan. Thanks for joining us. I'm really glad we got you to join in. So who wants to start to talk about? See, we haven't talked about it at all. So we can go from the beginning all the way through to that amazing finale of season two.
yeah, no, I really like this show. I've been hard on it because I wanted to see more action in certain episodes, but no, I thought it was a fitting whatever finale for this season. I liked it. I'm curious to hear what Ryan has to say about it.
Oh, you're on the spot, Ryan. Peter. Now, Peter
Well,
just started. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. I
I,
didn't.
I don't mean to put you on the
Yeah.
spot, but
well,
like we haven't heard. I know you have something to say, so let
well,
me get out of the way.
I love the first season, which was very self-contained, even though it was within a larger universe, but it was his own self-contained story. But I love the second season even more because it took it to another level and it brought in storylines from previous Star Wars series. If you had, for those of us who had watched either Star Wars: The Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels or both, we saw a continuation of those characters, such as with Ahsoka Tano or Bo-Katan, whose characters they already have a back history on those cartoons. So we were to see them brought to life in live action was just quite moving. I mean, there was rumors that it was going to happen before the second season of the series took place, but still to see it happen in live action was just mind blowing, at least for me. And in the case of Bo-Katan, you had the actual actors who voiced her on the cartoons. Um, so to get have the same actress bringing the character to life was also moving, and of course the same thing with Boba Fett, having Tamora Morrison return, who did Jango Fett in the prequels, and also in the special editions did the voiceover for Boba Fett. So to have him come back nearly 2 decades later and reprise the same role again was just also mind-boggling. So it really, for me, it took the show to another level, stretching out its arms into other sectors of the Star Wars universe. And then, of course, if that wasn't enough, the icing on the cake was the ending with episode 8, which I won't get into yet since
Well,
we're not
yeah,
on that yet.
yeah, we'll get into it later because I mean it's been what, about a month since the finale. Well, a
Yeah.
few
Yeah.
weeks, so most people know the surprise, but we'll get into it later. I did want to mention Peter has not seen the first season and a half of this show. Um,
Nope.
we're doing our usual movie nights, and I don't know why. I don't know if I was watching it that night and you came over, and he immediately, kind of like halfway through season two, he got hooked into
Oh,
Mandalorian.
yeah.
So, Peter, you want to go and give some thoughts on the show and what you've seen so
Now,
far?
I saw the first Star Wars kind of just as an accident in the first week that it came out. Just
Really?
went. I I like science fiction movies. Let's play. Um, I love when the ship went over the first time. I was sitting in my seat with my mouth just open. Um, uh, but I'm not a Star Wars fanatic, and I had a lot of people say you should watch The Mandalorian, and I was just like, whatever. After I saw The Mandalorian, after Lori introduced me to it, I hooked. I
Uh,
was. So because I thought that they told a thoughtful story. I love the look, but the story was maybe even 10 times better than the look. So in watching it, it seemed that it got better and better. Even with just enough action to kind of, give you just a little taste, the story, the actors, the actresses were great. and then the one I ended up like, oh my goodness.
Peter has his crushes on like several of the actresses in the show now. After after watching this season, which is what was it, the final episode? I'm like, forget what the final scene was. Peter, you got to see this episode because up to it, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of talk about how great that the first 3/4 of that episode are. Because it gets overshadowed by that, but it's like, you're gonna love this one. You got to come by and see this. And it was just as COVID restrictions kind of kicked up again here in LA. I'm like, I don't care if it kills us. You got to see this final episode. Oh my gosh.
Well, Peter, if you haven't seen the first season, you're in for an interesting surprise, because there's a lot of good stuff in the first season, like IG-88 and Baby Yoda, when he
first introduction and all that.
Let's
go back to the first season too. Yeah, because when I first watching the show, it's a space western, which is always kind of interesting. It's the well done one too, and it gave off, it reminded me of, and it's not a comic book or a manga that I've read, but Lone Wolf and Cub is immediately thought. It's like, okay, that's probably going to go. It also reminded me of the old 70s TV show Kung Fu, where he's just traveling. It's a Western scenery. He's kind of this religious. He's a Shaolin monk, so there's that religious aspect that, like Mandalorians, there's all have about their culture. And traveling from town to town, and having all these experiences. And so I really enjoyed the first season in that respect, to see. And this is what I particularly liked. As somebody, Star Wars were just the movies to me. I didn't really get into the expanded universe stuff, comics, books, or anything. When I tried, they just didn't click with me. But seeing this really made me appreciate how the world building of Star Wars and how George Lucas goes so deep into building these galaxies, these planets, these cultures. It's really amazing, and I think this is a show that really made me appreciate and understand that. To which, so I've gone into trying to watch the Clone Wars. I started with the first season, so it's taken me some time to go on to try to really dig in, but I want to keep going back and looking. But by the time this season came along, and characters like Ahsoka came along and a little bit of Bo-Katan, I was familiar with them and that they had already been established for me. And so for me, it was exciting, probably even more exciting than even the final scene was seeing those characters come to life and seeing them integrated in this season. But that's my take, at least on first season. I just really liked that space western kung fu Lone Wolf and Cub vibe they were going with.
I wanted to add real quick, Laurie. I think that it's interesting that you mentioned that about the Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah.
I think that might be intentional, and
I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I really like about this series is it's just really well written. Like Jon Favreau put a lot of details, a lot of nice little details into the everything that happens in the series. So yeah, like I said, yeah, that's one thing I like as well. I think it might even be intentional to some extent, because not to be jumping back and forth, but I sent you guys an article I think it was like episode 6 or 7 of the second season, and that was based on that film Sorcerer.
Oh yeah, you've talked about that film quite
Yeah,
a bit. Even
I thought
before
that was
that, that was
interesting.
pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's a great film, but it got destroyed at the box office because it came out like around the same time as Star Wars. So yeah, I think Jon Favreau. That's what keeps me watching the show. Is I know it's gonna be interesting because he knows a lot about Star Wars. He's obviously very passionate about George Lucas's Star Wars.
Yeah, and he's had Lucas even on set, and then of course as his right hand man, he has Dave Filoni, who was George Lucas's own Padawan when they were making the Clone Wars. So he's the closest we can get to sort of an apprentice to George himself. And I think for many Star Wars fans, especially those of us who are disappointed with the sequels, the Mandalorian seems to be a more authentic continuation of the direction of the Star Wars saga that George laid out, as opposed to what Disney have been doing with the sequel trilogy films. That sort of seems to be sort of a consensus opinion, at least for those of us that weren't fans of the sequel trilogy, where Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni sort of seem to have a more grounded and genuine understanding of what Lucas's vision was and how to carry that story forward.
I think I wanted to bring up something because I saw this maybe like 2 weeks ago in regards to the sequel trilogy, and I don't know if you've heard, I'm sure you've heard about the whole Alan Dean Foster, the author who did the book adaptions for Star Wars, and he's fighting with Disney now because they stopped paying his royalties for those books. I mean, did all the big 20th Century Fox films, which would be all the Star Wars. He did the Alien movies, I think. I don't think Terminator was part of that, I forget. But they cut off his royalties. And what I found was interesting is there's a lot of, the claim came up with his debate is like, the reason why they didn't like dip into the rich territory of the expanded universe and a lot of things that had already been written and developed is because they didn't want to pay the writers. They didn't want to. They didn't want to. Yeah, they didn't want to license. They didn't want
intellectual
properties that were already owned by or developed by other people. So they're like, oh, and Peter, as somebody who used to work for Disney, he's like, we can do it better. You know how they do.
That was always their line. We know we can do it better. It's like.
Oh, it's painful. It hurts.
I gotta say, I love this version of a Disney produced Star Wars, whatever movie or show. I mean, to me, this feels like Star Wars. This is real Star Wars, and it's for the fans. It's like, it's for people who love Star Wars.
It's the best kind of fan service. I think when they do fan service, they do it in such a manner that's not just, oh, hey, let's just pop this character in to get a lot of, people riled up. They build up to it. They integrate it in the story in a sensible manner that makes sense. And it was, I was kind of, I mean, should we talk about the season 2 finale? Since so the big moment.
I think so. I mean, I think it's okay to just say
people have seen it.
Review because it's the whole 2 seasons is over already. I think anyone.
I think we're a little late on the bandwagon here.
Yeah.
So with Luke Skywalker showing up, I'd seen some things mentioning, that was going to be a possibility. And then the day the show came out, people were already spoiling it on Twitter. So it wasn't a big surprise for me, but it was cool to see. And I had a fun time, like, after that, just going around YouTube and watching fan reactions to Luke showing up and just how excited and jazzed, and they were just mind blown. Grown men were crying. It was great. It was so much fun. So I'm glad, I'm always admitted I love The Last Jedi, but Ryan and I have talked about this. I'm happy with considering it some kind of alternate universe thing, and not canon or anything else. And they can scrap and crap with the other 2 movies. So, but I mean, it was just the best kind of fan service to see, you know. So,
Yeah. I my only real complaint has been that like in the first season they had a few episodes that I thought were like kind of like filler, you know. But I mean, looking back on it over the last two seasons, no, it's a pretty enjoyable show to watch. I mean, I'm not a like a
oh, did we get
Star Wars
everybody
fan, but
freeze?
I'm not
Okay,
like a
there we go.
huge Star Wars fan either, Ryan. Yeah, I should say that. But I mean, I grew up playing with Boba Fett action figures and being a kid in that era and loving, you know, that aspect of the Star Wars fandom. So yeah, this like seeing Boba Fett again is incredible. You know, I like the Giancarlo Esposito
Oh man, I
character.
love him.
Yeah, I think he legitimately feels like he comes from that galaxy, the Star Wars galaxy that we all know, you know, from the 70s and 80s. So that like really, I would say for anyone who loves Star Wars, this show I can't see it being an issue. There's so much to love about it, you know. And for people who don't even necessarily love Star Wars, I can see. I imagine they would enjoy this show as well. It's it's I don't know. I hope it represents more of the future of stuff they're gonna put out. More to come. You know what we can expect or hope for. You know.
Well, and they've already got 3 spin-off series planned for it. You've got the Ahsoka show, the Book of Boba Fett, and Rangers of the New Republic.
Mm.
And supposedly there's going to be a larger overarching story arc, kind of like on the Netflix Marvel shows, where you had this larger arc that ended up culminating in the Defenders series. So that's kind of supposedly what they're going for here. There's going to be a larger story arc that ties all 4 shows back together. But hopefully it's better than the Defenders was.
I don't think I've
It's
seen
just,
Defenders. Have you,
Hopefully,
Peter?
yeah.
Peter, you're our Marvel guy, so
I am excited to have Ryan here because he's such a Star Wars fan.
we's a
And
knowledgeable Star Wars fan. We're fans, but we don't
yeah,
know shit about it.
yeah. Um,
Excuse the language.
I love, and I'm sorry, I just say it this way. I love the first 2 Star Wars. Yes, that's A New Hope. That's number 4 and number 5. Um, the
No Return of the
number
Jedi.
6, the third one, Return. It's kind of like, you know what? Why do they have those little creatures? I don't like that.
The little teddy
That's
bears.
what everyone says.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
but yeah.
but so I was never a huge Star Wars fan. I did like Luke, and I liked Darth Vader, and you know, so I was good there. But now going back to Mandalorian, that last episode of season 2, the finale. Oh my goodness! I'm just glad that they didn't show the orgy that we all had in that elevator.
Oh, you in the oh, you're a mess, Peter. Peter has a crush on Cara Dune, who's Fennec,
Uh,
and
Yeah,
Bo-Katan, and what's the
Man,
other
the
Mandalorian,
whole
the
crew.
female? He was
yeah.
all the girls.
I
That's
I
all his
don't
women.
remember them all.
Mhm.
He dumped
I,
Rosie Perez for
I'm
all of
crazy
them.
about them all.
Well,
You dumped Rosie
Perez
Perez for all of those? Man,
All of that.
you
Well,
must
it's
have
3
really
for 1.
be into them.
it's 3 for it did take 3 or 3 or
4
4.
for 1.
It took
No,
4
it's 4.
for you to give up Rosie Perez. So
Oh wow.
that is saying something. So
But like one of my uncles once said is that, oh no, I'm going for all 4. But Rosie, stay there. I'll be back.
oh my God,
But
who said that?
no, well,
I'm imagining
Jerome.
if Rosie Perez
Oh
saw
really?
this
Oh
video,
goodness.
she'd
Okay.
be like, "Who is this person talking about me? I've never met this person. He keeps talking about me."
Oh, it's just
Yeah.
fan. You know, it's
I'm
typical
sorry.
fan
No,
stuff.
but
You know.
when I saw Luke come in, and I knew it was him,
Yeah.
dressed with the hood and stuff. I said, nobody actually handles a lightsaber like that except for Luke. And I was going, oh my goodness. But I was doing it from a prone position because I was already tired and ready to smoke a cigarette from the elevator.
The previous. Oh goodness. The women just laying waste to the crew of that ship.
Oh,
and then,
yeah.
So, oh my goodness.
Well, I am looking forward to the other shows that are going to come out of this. I'm a Ahsoka Tano fan, so I mean, like I definitely like you said, Laurie. It was cool to see these characters come to life or be brought to life, in a convincing way. I thought that was a cool aspect of.
Brought into just the groundwork was laid really. I'm looking forward to the Ahsoka show mostly. I don't, maybe the New Republic one. I don't know anything about it, but Boba Fett. I'm glad. I loved Boba Fett in this show, but I've never been interested enough in the character to want to follow along his adventures more. But if they're going to be tying them all together, now these are just 3 shows they're going to be tying in with the Mandalorian, Ryan. But they've announced a lot of other things that are not going to be part of the overall story. They're just kind of independent of.
Right, they'll be part of the Star Wars timeline, but they're not part of this sort of smaller universe that the Mandalorian has going on.
Everything affects each other basically on these.
Right.
Yeah, but what's going on in the outer ones doesn't affect anything.
Right. So some of the other shows, there's going to be a Lando series, which won't touch on this. There'll be a show called The Acolyte, which is before the fall of the Republic, during what they're now calling the High Republic era. You're going to have the Rogue Squadron film, which is going to be set into the future at some point. How far into the future is quite clear. The sequels. So there's a variety of different things. And then there's a number of different cartoons, like The Bad Batch, which is a spin-off of the Clone Wars set during the Imperial era. And then there's going to be the Cassian Andor show, which is a spin-off of Rogue One, live action, also set during the Imperial era. So none of those shows will touch on this sort of, I guess you could call it, Mandalorian miniverse that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have going on. I just kind of liken it to the Netflix Avenger shows, which had their own little thing. Theoretically, they were part of the wider Marvel Cinematic Universe, but really they were their own thing that they had going on. Whether it was Daredevil or Jessica Jones or Punisher, and then they all would come together in the Defenders. Same kind of approach here, where you have with the Mandalorian, Rangers of the New Republic, Ahsoka, and the Book of Boba Fett. Well, they'll each do their own thing, and then they'll eventually tie back together. But I think with Favreau and Filoni in charge, for the fans, it's almost as if they can do no wrong. So I have great trust in what it is they're going to do based on their past success record so far.
Right.
Well,
I agree.
Yeah, I have trust in kind of like the mini universe they're doing that's going to be interrelated, like along the same timeline. But this Disney deciding to do so many shows just kind of smells of let's do a Star Wars movie a year. So I'm afraid they might be doing too much. It's like don't have like 10 shows. Come on, can you concentrate on a few and then as those get going, if you can take on more, do that. But
Laurie, that's an excellent point. I think there's pressure for Disney to make back money off of its investment.
That's a good point.
And it's kind of smells of desperation. It's like, it's like, how many Star Wars shows do we really need? It's like, just make a few and do them really well.
Right.
How about that?
That's what I wish they would focus on.
Yeah.
So.
Because I do have to say, the very first Star Wars, A New Hope, all of the Star Wars seem to be real. It really happened. There was no question. there was never a question of it. This really happened, and Darth Vader is the scariest guy in the universe ever.
Well,
But and the Mandalorian seemed to take that on. Yes, he was real. That really happened. Um, in Star Wars, I was never a big Boba Fett fan, but now I have to watch the show because I learned a little bit more about Boba Fett in The Mandalorian, and I want to learn more. I want to find out who he was and what he did. Um, so there are a lot of things that were in The Mandalorian that made me say, I want more. But you know, the idea of Disney bringing so many more things out there, yeah, I'm kind of going, don't do that. You know, just
Please
let's
don't
stick
screw
to
it.
the
yeah.
They're doing so good
Go
right
for it,
now
man.
after like stumbling so bad, you know.
Yeah.
So, but one thing I want to my Boba Fett moment. One thing this show taught me about Boba Fett, and I've never been really cared about the character all that much, is jetpacks are cool. Jetpacks are really cool. They look amazing on the show. And Slave One is like one of my favorite ships now in the whole Star Wars universe. I just love how it flew in this show. It just looks so cool to me. So I get it now. I get Boba Fett fanboys and fangirls. I get it now. I understand you. So,
Yeah, this show reminded me of why I like Boba Fett. I mean, I'm a Boba Fett fan, but we've never really seen that much of him. He had his whatever pseudo demise in the third film.
Oh, it was ridiculous. It was comical because after,
Right.
there was so much anticipation for that character and everybody thought he looked really cool, thought he was going to be this major badass, and going out the way he does in Return of the Jedi, it's like, oh, that sucks.
Right.
So
Right.
I know, Hamilton, you
But-
mentioned you had the action figure.
Yeah, I had the
movie before
original, the big one,
Empire,
like not the little,
yeah.
the big one. I wish I had kept it.
And you're like, oh shoot, I can't wait till this character does something cool. And
Yeah, no, really. Like it was like to be a kid at that time. I was like maybe around 10 years old. So that was like I was in love with Star Wars, of course. In that regard, I grew up on Star Wars. It's just that I'm not as, I guess, a big a fan as others. I guess I always feel there's people who know so much more about Star Wars, who love Star Wars on a whole other level.
Yeah.
So I would never like claim to be a huge Star Wars fan in that regard. But yeah, like you said, seeing Slave One actually flying across the screen in an action context was just like awesome. Like really, like
that's a badass
I didn't
ship.
know I needed to see that, but
Yeah.
I needed to see that.
Exactly.
Like for real. So like this series for me, I wasn't as excited for whatever reason at the beginning of this season because I wanted to see more Moff Gideon, and I was like waiting for Moff Gideon to show up, but I mean this season was excellent as much as the last season was excellent. I thought this season makes me want to see what they're gonna do next. The whole. I'm curious about the book of Boba Fett. Do you know anything about that, Ryan?
No, I mean, I know they're shooting it right now as we speak, and it's supposed to come out in December, if I remember right, at the end of this year. But it's largely being kept under wraps.
Right.
And it's supposed to be with him and Fennec Shan, and of course he's sort of taken over Jabba's old palace. And that's sort of all what we know so far.
Credit tag. That's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that little whatever Easter egg in the credits. Yeah. What's the character that he kills?
The guy.
Bib
who
Fortuna.
answers
Yeah, Bib Fortuna. Yeah, thank you.
the guy who answers the
Yeah.
door. That's all I know.
Yeah, I love that.
I will take you to
That's-
Jabba
I
now.
love the fact
I can't
that
speak full
this,
language.
to me, this is how you do Star Wars. This is, if you want to bring this series back, this is how you do it. It's it has to ring true for fans. It has to feel like something authentic. It can't feel kind of sort of. It has to be right on, and this is right on Star Wars all the way.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so.
you guys want to wrap up? I know you mentioned Giancarlo Esposito. He's amazing in this. I love him in this. He's just
Yes,
oh,
thumbs
I
up.
call him Moth Bugging Out, by the way. So, and I also got to mention. I mean, they have a. I love that they have a specific group of directors that take on that are doing each of the episodes, and they have this kind of group. I don't think it's going to continue that way, but they have their core group of directors that are working with Favreau and Filoni. In doing this. So I got to, of course, mention Rick Famuyiwa from St. Bernard's, graduated my high school, of course, years after I was there, but, but he did,
Well,
it's kind of interesting because he directed the episode that was based off the Sorcerer movie. And
oh, okay.
yeah,
Right.
so that's interesting that somebody, and he's from Inglewood too, so that's another great thing. But it's really interesting that just think of the level of film knowledge he has that to bring that in, incorporate that kind of obscure movie. Like, I've never heard of it until you mentioned it, Hamilton, and you're like the king of obscure movies yourself. So.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent film. It just came out at the wrong time. Like in terms of which way the audience was going. When Star Wars came out, the audience went in the same direction Star Wars was taking them.
One other thing.
But,
go ahead. I continue. Yeah.
No. I was just gonna add to what you were saying. Like, have you seen Dope by any chance?
I have seen Dope several times. One of my favorite movies.
I feel like
Dope reminds me of.
Bring that up.
It reminds me of us growing up. That was like this is
right.
This is us in Inglewood when we were kids. That was totally us. Except we didn't have a punk band.
I was gonna recommend that book if you guys hadn't seen it. But no, for real. I love everything about this series. I was kind of, like I said, the first few episodes, I was like, oh, this feels like they're going back to just whatever, meandering.
Episode of the week kind of thing.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool that he got together with the Tusken Raiders, but it was also kind of like, it felt like I want to see Moff Gideon.
He wants to see, he's just that good.
I was like, don't leave me hanging for like 5 episodes or whatever, just so I can see this character again, So, but no, it was good. This season was good. I love this show. I guess anyone who hasn't seen this show, definitely recommend this show. We can wrap it up, Laurie.
Yeah,
I'm good.
another thing I was just going to mention, like the kick-ass woman element of this that wasn't done in a heavy-handed sort of manner. So even their scene like that, the final, I was just loving the whole Terminator vibe and aliens of like that final episode up until Luke shows up, and I think it gets kind of lost because the Luke moment is so big, but just really having them shine and kick ass, and I thought it was great. And like I said, and we've talked about this, like there's, I even think of like Avengers Endgame, and they have the female moment, the women's moment, and it just kind of like, it's so on the nose and it's a little cheesy.
It seems.
Come on, Leon, we're gonna do it now. It's cool, but at the same time, it's kind of like makes you groan too. But this one was really done really well. Anybody else have some final thoughts you want to go with Mandalorian?
Well, I know that in that scene when they were in the elevator, when the gun wouldn't work, and she did a Schwarzenegger Fonzie kind of bam, and I was just like, yes.
I gotta stop drinking on this. I'm drinking lemonade, by the way. Sorry.
That's all right. You want to say anything else, Ryan?
Anything you want to wrap up with, Ryan?
Looks like you were going to get in there.
Well, just one last thing. In terms of the Luke scene, well, I guess I'll say 2 things. One, when I was watching it, fortunately, I was not spoiled.
Oh, good.
So to go into it having my mind blown, and even though it's like on one level I knew it was him the minute we see a single X-wing, and then we're seeing the hood and the gloved hand and the green lightsaber,
right.
I just kind of kept yelling saying no way, no way, no way, and yet everyone.
Oh, I wish there was a camera on you at that moment.
It's clearly him, but I can't believe what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say is it brought to mind two other Star Wars moments. Darth Vader in Rogue One, the hallway scene at the end of the movie where he is just slashing through rebels left and right. And there's a similar scene in Star Wars: The Clone Wars in the final episodes of season 7 with Darth Maul. Well, Darth Maul does a similar thing with clone troopers, slashing through them left and right. So a lot of people have been comparing the Luke scene, Luke battling the Dark Troopers, to Vader and Darth Maul.
Right.
Those two things. So I'm sure that had to be in the back of the mind of Favreau and Filoni when they scripted that scene. But that just blew me away. It really did. And then, when R2 rolls out, that just got the inner child in me.
I think the R2 scene got me because I wasn't, I didn't think about R2. Of course, R2 would be with him. And so that was the surprise for me. I was like, So, I mean, and I did want to mention the Luke CGI. I do hope they just find an actor to replace Luke. And I didn't mind. The CGI was a little wonky. I didn't mind it because, as long as maybe if they're morphing into somebody taking over the role as young Luke, and if it's the actor that did, do some of the body scenes for this, fine. And you can just, morph into him for whatever future episodes or stories they use Luke in. So I hope they do. I hope they do.
I've seen a video on YouTube comparing the original footage of Star Wars with Luke to like a deep fake with Sebastian Stan's features, and he does resemble Mark Hamill, almost like he looks like a better version of Mark Hamill, young Mark Hamill, because he has really good skin and.
Before Mark Hamill had his car accident.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, no, I'm not saying that Mark Hamill has bad skin. I'm just saying this kid looks like Mark Hamill, but even better. If that's even possible.
The latest one is Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things as Princess
Leia.
Leia. That's pretty. I was like, wow. Yeah.
Yep.
It seems so obvious now once somebody kind of brings it up. It's like, oh yeah, she does look like young Carrie Fisher a lot. So
Right.
Wait a minute, I didn't see that.
You haven't seen these? These are on.
So Bobby Brown is in drag?
No, not Bobby Brown.
No, Millie Bobby Brown.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Actress.
God.
Totally different.
Crack is whack, Peter.
So to wrap it up, y'all. I'm gonna say, Disney, if you're listening, I don't think you are, but if you were listening, this is the way to do Star Wars. If you want to make money from the fans in a way that is gonna encourage future generations to come back, this is the way to do it.
Peter Collins.
And so I hope that maybe you will be listening to this video. And thank you. And I guess we're out.
We out, guys. Anybody else?
We out.
Yeah.
You want to clap?
No.
We out, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us, Ryan.
Hey, thank you,
anytime
Ryan.
you want to join us for anything, you're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Sorry, Laurie. I got to get off. I don't mean to jump off. But we'll talk later. It was cool meeting you, bro. Have a good night, Peter. You guys take care.
All right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Good night.